ॐ वेदऋषयस्समारभ्य वेदान्ताचार्यामध्यमाः योगीरां सुरत्कुमारपर्यन्तं वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां रत्नाकराधौतपतां हिमालयकिरीटिनीं ब्रह्मराजऋषिरत्नाढ्यां वन्दे भारतमातरम्. In Indian philosophical terminology, the word astika and nastika, usually they are translated as those who believe in God, and nastika is those who do not believe in God. That is the usual translation that is given. But in the Indian philosophical terminology, these words have got different meanings. We had seen that the whole heritage, philosophical heritage of Bharatavarsha, it descends from the Vedas. Right from the Vedas, the entire philosophical heritage of Bharatavarsha has been influenced by the Vedas. But in the later days, there arose schools of thought, some of which questioned the authority of the Vedas. In Indian philosophical schools, there are Astika schools and Nastika schools. They are not based on belief in God or not belief in God. Astika schools are those that accept the authority of the Vedas. Nastika schools are those that do not accept the authority of the Vedas. It is not necessary that the Nastika schools must reject the existence of God, and it is also not necessary that the Astika schools must accept the existence of God. We will see later. Among the Astika schools, Astika darshanas, we have got Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Uttara Mimamsa, and Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa. These are called Astika darshanas. Of course, Sankhya philosophy, it is also known as Nirishwara Sankhya because it rejects the existence of God, but it presupposes the existence of Purusha and Prakriti. The Nastika schools, generally Buddhism, Jainism, Charvaka, Ajivika, these are all considered as Nastika schools because they do not accept the ultimate authority of the Vedas. Now, before we go into the Astika schools, we would look into some of these Nastika schools, Buddhism, Jainism, Charvaka, etc., which arose at a very late age, that is, after the Puranic period. Though Buddha came much later, the emergence of the Puranas, and in the traditional Puranas, there is no mention about Buddhavatara. The Dasavatara, it speaks about Kalki Avatara, Krishna Avatara, and then Kalki Avatara. But we find in the later days, Buddha was declared as an avatara of Lord Narayana. We found that in the Gita Govinda, Jayadeva sings, Nindasi yajna vidhera hahasruti jadam sadaya hridaya dharshita pashughadam Keshava Dhrita Buddha Sharira. So he says, the Vedic rites and rituals, way of worship, was distorted, and some meaningless rites and rituals, they were declared as having the authority of the Vedas, and on the basis of it, illegitimate, ignorant rites and rituals came into existence, followed by the people of the Hindu society. And it was at this juncture that Buddha appeared on the scene. Nindasi yajna vidher, that means distorted Vedic rites and rituals. Nindasi yajna vidher, ahahastruti jadam. Of course, these Vedic injunctions, they have their origin in the Shruti. Shruti, we have already seen, refers to the original Vedas, the Chatur Vedas, that which was heard by the great rishis in their intuitive experience. Sutijadam, the Vedic rites and rituals. But Nindasi means distorted. Though they had originated in the Vedas, in the later days they were all distorted, and ignorance pervaded the rites and rituals, especially the rites and rituals like Narabali, Pashubali, we have already seen. The Vedic rishis wanted us to destroy the animal in us. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya, all these are the animal qualities in us. They must be destroyed. That's what the rishis wanted. But instead of destroying them, we just converted that ritual into killing of poor, dumb, innocent animals. Pashubali, killing of goat, killing of buffalo, killing of cock and hen. All these distortions came into existence in the later days. And Jayadeva says, Nindasi yajna vidher ahahastruti jadam sadaya hridaya dharshita pashughadam. Seeing that the poor and innocent animals were butchered in the name of rites and rituals, Keshava Dhrita Buddha Sharira, the Lord Narayana himself, Keshava, he himself took to the form of Buddha and he appeared on the stage. This is what Jayadeva says. So Buddha came to be considered as an avatara of Lord Narayana itself. Edwin Arnold has translated the Gita Govinda Song Celestial into English. He has also presented a wonderful English poetic work, The Light of Asia, that deals with the life of Buddha. Very beautifully he has presented the life of Buddha and stressed the important ideals of Buddha. So Buddha in later days came to be accepted as an avatara of Lord Narayana. Of course, among the Buddhists, there were two sections, the Hinayana and Mahayana. The Hinayana, they do not accept all these conception of avatars and other things, whereas Mahayana accepts Buddha as an avatara. And in later days, we found the Jataka tales depicting the incarnation of Buddha in different forms coming into existence and teaching humanity the values of life. These are all depicted in the Jataka tales. So there are two sections of Buddhists. One accepts Buddha as an avatara and praises him. whereas the other section, Hinayana, both these are prevalent in Ceylon, China, and all these countries. These sects are prevalent. Now, we will look into the essentials of the Buddhistic philosophy. This Buddhism arose in a particular period, as I said, when the Vedas were distorted, etc. And Buddha, who appeared on the scene, he was Prince of Kapilavastu, Siddhartha. He, as a young boy, as a young man, one day when he was traveling in his chariot, he saw a dead corpse being carried, and on another occasion, he saw an old man, tottering old man walking. He witnessed the suffering of the people, and that touched his heart. Why human beings are suffering? Old age, death, disease, all these come and they afflict the human life. He started pondering over that, and he realized the impermanence of all this wealth, health, and all these things, worldly life. It is not permanent, it is just whiling away. Why should I aspire for such a life? And he took to renunciation. He renounced his kingdom. Though he was married, he gave up his wife, and then he entered into the forest, sat under a Bodhi tree, and intense practice of meditation. At last, he attained enlightenment. The place is known as Buddha Gaya. Even today, it is a pilgrim center not only for the Buddhists but also for the Hindus. So he attained enlightenment, and then he came back to the society to preach to the humanity what human life is and should be. So Buddha started preaching. But unlike other philosophers, he didn't record any philosophical doctrines or anything. He didn't propound any philosophical system or doctrines. He didn't give discourse on Atman, God, soul, all these things. He never mentioned anything about these philosophical terminologies. Whatever he spoke to his disciples, that was the philosophy, the only philosophy. In the later days, the disciples, they gathered all his sayings, and they created the work called Tripitaka. 3 important books. Under the title, 3 scriptures they created: Vinaya Pitaka, Shuddha Pitaka, and Abhidhamma Pitaka. These 3, Pitaka means basket. His advisors were all collected in these 3 baskets and presented before the people. Unlike the other Vedic and Vedantic scriptures, they were not in Sanskrit, but they were in Pali, the language of the people in the northeast, the ordinary tribal language. His thoughts were all presented in these 3 Pitakas, which were in the Pali language. So they became the basic scriptures of Buddhism. And as I said, in later days, Buddhism took to 2 streams, one Hinayana and the other one Mahayana. Hinayana took root in Ceylon, Burma, Siam, and Mahayana had its base in Tibet, China, Japan, etc. So Buddhism had 2 such lineages in the later days. What are the fundamental teachings of Buddha? Buddha spoke of 4 noble truths. What are those 4 noble truths? We will go into it. As I said, he was pondering about human life, why we suffer, why we have come into this world, why we are suffering, and where are we going to end up. So all these thoughts he presented in these 4 noble truths. The first noble truth is that human life is full of suffering. Of course, in the world of objects, we enjoy the pleasures, happiness, etc., sensual pleasures, eating, drinking, sleeping, all these enjoyments we do get. But behind all this, there is only suffering. All enjoyments, they ultimately lead to suffering only. So Buddha realized that there is no real joy or happiness in the worldly life, worldly existence. Worldly existence is a bundle of suffering. That is the first noble truth. The human life, passing through stages of birth, old age, disease, and death, it is a story of suffering. Right from the childhood, the suffering continues till our death. There is no permanent happiness or peace in the worldly life. That was the first basic truth that was propounded by Buddha. The second truth, he said, it was about the emergence of suffering. Where from this suffering comes? He says there is a process of emergence of these sufferings. So the second truth, it is known as pratitya samutpada. How this suffering arises, step by step, this suffering arises. 12 steps, 12 links are presented by Buddha in the pratitya samutpada. The first one is that suffering exists, jara maranam, old age and death, it is inevitable for any living being. All the beings that come into existence must necessarily grow weak. Every day in our life is one step towards death. Often we do not realize it, but Buddha realized that. Buddha propounded that. Every day in our life, we are marching one step towards death. The growth is ultimately a march towards death extinction. So jara, the weakening of the body, and maranam, the ultimate departure from the body, it is a basic truth of life. So therefrom, all these springs, these links speak, suffering links start. The second link is birth. The immediate cause of suffering. What is the immediate cause of suffering? Coming into this world existence. Usually when the children are born, when the child is born, it cries. Our philosophers say, because it has come into this world of existence, it is pained. So the very pain, very birth itself, according to Buddha, is the beginning of suffering. And why we are born? Buddha speaks about it. That is the third thing. He says that there is a will to be born that is called bhava. And that bhava is responsible for our birth. Where from it comes? He says, from attachment to objects. In Bhagavad Gita also we found that the more you are attached to the world, the vasanas accrue, and once you depart from this physical body, in order to exhaust the vasanas, you have to take a rebirth. Here Buddha also speaks that attachment to objects, upadana, it creates the will to be born. And then there is desire, trishna, attachment. Once we come into existence into this world, the attachment to this world starts. We are attached to our mother, father, our kith and kin, the worldly objects, our house, society, wealth, health, all these attachments gradually they spring up. So, the fifth link is trishna or desire, attachment. And then the sixth link is Vedana. When we live in this world of objects, we have the experience, sense experience of all things around us. So, this experience, sense experience, is the cause of desire. We saw a beautiful flower, we want to pluck it. We saw a delicious fruit, we want to eat it. The desire springs from our experience, contact, sensual experience creates the desire, and then this desire, this sensual experience, it springs out of sparsha, our contact, our indriyas. It comes into contact with the world of objects, our ears, nose, tongue, skin, ear, all these eyes, they all are in touch with the worldly objects. In Bhagavad Gita also Krishna says, Indriyani chartam yadmanon vidhiyate, when these senses are driven into the world of objects, the mind also follows it. So he says that sparsha, the contact with these world of objects, it creates sensual experience. And the six sense organs, our ear, nose, tongue, skin, eyes, mind, all these are the causes for this contact. This ultimately results in the constitution of our mind and body. Our mind and body is constituted by our sense experiences, and our contact of the objects, it creates our individual physical life. And out of this sense contact, we get vijnanam. When we were studying Bhagavad Gita, we found that there is difference between jnanam and vijnanam. Vijnanam is the knowledge that is obtained through our worldly experiences. Jnanam is the higher intuitive experience, whereas vijnanam is our intellectual experience. So, these sensual contact, etc., and the mind coming into contact with objects, etc., ultimately it leads to vijnanam. And then these contacts and this understanding of the things of world, it creates vasanas in us. Vasanas is impressions. It creates impressions in the mind. And these impressions, when we depart from the physical body, we carry these impressions, vasanas. And in order to exhaust the vasanas, as we found in the Gita, we have to take a rebirth. And these impressions, these vasanas, they create the samskara, and because of these vasanas, we get avidya, ignorance. All the false knowledge about the world, etc., it is all because of our attachment to the world of objects. So these links are presented by Buddha in the second noble thought. The third noble truth proclaimed by Buddha is that this sorrow, suffering, can be stopped by removing its cause. It is not necessary that everyone who has come into this world must necessarily die carrying all the vasanas with him. Hindu way of life proudly proclaims that coming into existence in the world of objects is to exhaust the vasanas, exhaust the existing vasanas and see that no new vasanas are created. If we live such a life, exhausting the vasanas, existing vasanas, and seeing that no new vasanas are created, gradually we are liberated from the bondage of life. So Buddha says, the third noble truth says, that we can stop this suffering. It is not necessary that eternally we should suffer. It is not an eternal thing. And this stopping of the suffering, he calls it as nirvana, complete cessation of suffering. That is nirvana. And one who attains to that state, nirvana, he is known as arhat. So Buddha says that everyone can raise himself to the level of an arhat, where there will be a cessation of all suffering, all sensual experiences in the world causing vasanas, and vasanas causing desire and suffering, etc. This can be stopped once for all, and we can get relieved. This state of nirvana, he says, each one can attain. Now the fourth noble truth Buddha has propounded is that how to get relief from this suffering and attain that nirvana. The state of nirvana he explained, but how to attain that state of nirvana, Buddha propounds the Ashtanga Marga. Ashtanga Marga means an eightfold step, eightfold path to realizing that ultimate nirvana. How to attain that? Those 8 steps he very beautifully presents. The first step is Samyak Drishti, right vision. This is the right understanding of the 4 noble thoughts propounded by him earlier. If you have a right understanding of the 4 noble thoughts, that there is suffering and there is a cause for the suffering, and the suffering is because of attachment, and there is a way of removing that suffering. If we understand these truths, that is Samyak Drishti, the right vision. And once we understand that this suffering can be removed by the right understanding of the world of objects and our goal in life and the path to get that nirvana, we have to make a will. We all know that this life is going to become extinct, and the goal of life is attainment of moksha or ultimate reality. But how many of us strive for that? Till the end of our life, most of the humanity, they crave to live a worldly existence. Even the dying man, he aspires that I must see my son, I must see my property, I must protect my property. Even at that stage, the attachment to the world, that is the nature of human life. Attachment never ceases. Why? Because unless we take a sankalpa, a will, that we will put an end to all this suffering and we will get relieved from this suffering, the right sankalpa, the right will, it is to be developed. I will develop a life towards realization. That will is to be developed. And then the third, in the Ashtanga Marga, the third step, he says, Samyak Vak. Our words must be perfect. Samyak Vak means not telling lies, not defaming others, not giving out angry expressions, etc., and not speaking unnecessarily. Control the speech. Our great tapasvis and rishis, even in modern period, the sannyasins, they observe Mauna Vrata. Stop unnecessary talk. And Satyam Vada, Dharmam Chara, never speak a lie. Live a righteous life. Not speaking lie, and then don't hurt others, defame others. It is said that one day Buddha was going out for bhiksha. He went to a rich man's house. The rich man, seeing this mendicant in his torn clothes, he had contempt for this beggar, and he started driving out. Chalo, chalo, bago, go away from here. He was driving out Buddha, and he was abusing Buddha. You people, you don't have any job, you don't do any work, go out begging and eating without any work. He started abusing Buddha. Buddha kept quiet, and without uttering a single word, he returned. That man asked him, I have abused you so much, but you are not reacting to what I am telling. That Buddha coldly said, if you give me something, and if I do not accept it, where will it remain? He says, it will remain in my hand. If I am giving you some rupee, you are not accepting, then it will remain in my hand only. Then Buddha said, whatever you have uttered now, if I have not accepted it, it will be with you only. So, not getting upset, he was very clear, not telling lies, not defying people, and not giving out any angry expression in reaction to all these. These are considered as the third step, Samyak Vak. And then the fourth is Samyak Karmanta, the right conduct. You have to observe your life. Dharmam Chara, that the Vedas said, righteous conduct is Dharmam Chara. And here Buddha proclaims it in the form of Panchashilas, 5 vows that you have to take. What is that right conduct? He says there are 5 methods of living. That is right conduct. What is that? First, non-killing. Don't injure any being, living being. Ahimsa paramo dharma. The Vedic rishis proclaimed it, and Buddha took it to the extreme. Do not harm any living being. That's why he protested against the Vedic rites and rituals of human sacrifice and animal sacrifice, etc. So the first step in the Panchashila, the first step is ahimsa, non-killing. And then non-stealing, second step. Do not misappropriate the belongings of other people. The Isavasya Upanishad proclaimed, Tena Tyaktena Bunjita. There are so many things in the world, but don't aspire to enjoy everything. Don't aspire to possess everything for yourself. Take whatever minimum is required for your survival and give up the other. So, non-stealing, asteyam, non-killing, ahimsa, asteyam, and not seeking sensual pleasures, brahmacharyam, we call it, control of the senses, not seeking sensual pleasures, and satyam, not speaking untruth. These are the Panchashila, ahimsa, satyam, asteyam, aparigraham. In Patanjali Yoga Sutra also, these are all already described And here Buddha reiterates it in the form of the Panchashilas, the 5 great vows. And then once you accept these Panchashilas, the next step is Samyak Jiva, perfect life. According to these ideals, absorbing these ideals in your day-to-day life, live a perfect, straightforward life with a firm determination. Never deviate from the path of virtues. Then Samyak Vyavasayam. Vyavasayam means Vyavasayatmika Buddhirekeha Kurandana. Effort, right effort. We have to take the right effort. We have the will, we have the understanding, we have the will. That is not sufficient. You must make a right effort to live this perfect life. So, right effort. When a man performs action with his right effort, the bad vasanas, they are all destroyed. So constant effort is needed to destroy all these bad vasanas. And the 7th Marga, Ashtanga Marga, 7th step in the Ashtanga Marga is Samyak Smriti. Smriti means attitude. We must have the right attitude, the realization of the things for body, mind and intellect. These must be kept in our memory, in our smriti, in our attitude. He explains these in his Dikanikaya. Buddha explains that these attitudes must be preserved. The 8th step is Samyak Samadhi. Samadhi is concentration. Once you realize the ephemerality of the world, if you understand the necessity to control your senses, to go within, and you have got the right will, you have got the right understanding and everything, then you must have right concentration. If the mind is not concentrating, it will again, however great you may be, big sadhaka you may be, if you don't have the control, concentration, the mind will be dragged into the world of senses. Even Vishwamitra had to fall. So, right concentration is very essential. And once you have that right concentration, samadhi, samyak samadhi, you enter into the realm of bliss. So, these are the basic truths propounded by Buddha. And Buddha also believed in the law of karma. We have already seen in the Gita that every action has got its equal and opposite reaction. What we sow, we will have to reap. So, the law of karma, Buddha accepts and he propounds it. Buddhism in the world is because of our actions, past actions. Buddhists accept not only these momentary experiences. Man is a combination of body, mind and experience. When this conglomeration disintegrates, human life ends. So from the psychological point of view, it is a combination of 5 limbs. He speaks about the 5 limbs. Rupa, that which gives form to our physical existence. Vedana, the experience of happiness, sorrow and indifference. Samjna, knowing of the things through the senses and naming them. Samskara, the previous birth's experiences, they start manifesting, and vijnana, the experience, right intellectual experience of all these things, these are the causes for our suffering, and we must get rid of all these. The sum and substance of Buddhism is contained in two ideas: suffering and removal of suffering. Human birth, life is full of suffering, and the goal of life is to remove the suffering. Buddha observed absolute silence on the metaphysical matters like soul, whether there is a soul, whether there is a God. He never spoke about God. He never spoke about soul. So, Buddha was totally silent. For these questions, when the disciples asked him the questions, his only answer was silence. But in the later days, these Buddhist schools, some of the teachers, they started propounding new visions of Buddhism, and there were 4 views about all these things. One, Shunyavada; the second, Madhyamikavada, Shunyavada or Madhyamikavada; the second, Vijnanavada or Yogachara; the third, Bahyanameyavada or Sautrantika; and Bahya Pratyakshavada or Vaibhasika. Whether the world is existing, whether the soul is existing, this question is there. Buddha didn't give any definite answer for all these. But the school of thought, Shunyavada or Madhyamika, they propounded that everything comes out of non-existence, nothingness. Shunya means nothing. Everything emerges out of nothingness, and everything ends there. That school of thought, Yogachara, everything is in our mind. There is nothing, everything is in the mind. That is the Vijnanavada school. Shunyavada is nothing exists, everything comes from nothingness. Vijnanavada or Yogachara school, they said there is something that is existing, and that is only our mind. Shunyavada said there is nothing at all, but Yogachara said, yes, there is something called mind, and the whole world, life, everything, it is all existing only in our mind. The world is only in mind. If there is no mind, there is no world at all. So, Yogachara or Vijnanavadins, they accepted the existence of the mind, and they attributed everything, existence of everything in the mind. Sautrantikas, they went one step ahead. They said, how does the mind know these things, the existence of the world? He said, through the senses. Mind comes into contact with the world of objects through the senses, and therefore everything is an experience of senses. Bahyanameyavada. I see the chair there, so therefore I say that the chair exists. I see the box here, I say therefore the box exists. So the existence is Bahyanameyavada. From the sense experience, I reason that there is something like that. I see a beautiful flower, I say it is rose, I say this is mango. All these are only through sense experience. Sense experience gives me the knowledge, vijnana, of the world of objects, and therefore Bahyanameyavada. From the sense experience, I infer the existence of the world. The fourth, Vaibhasikas, They say they get one step further. They differ. The Bahyanmayavada, they said, how can you say that there is a chair exists unless really the chair exists? You may say that I experience the chair through my senses, I see my eyes, I touch it, and therefore I come to the conclusion that this chair exists. But this Bahya Pratyakshavada, the Sautrantikas, Bahya Pratyakshavadins, they say, how can you experience if the chair does not exist, where from you will get the sense experience of the chair, and therefore Bahya Pratyakshavada, the world exists. We experience the world through our senses. So these are the four schools of Buddhism which came into existence. Hinayana Buddhism accepted the extreme thoughts of Buddha, that the whole world is suffering, there is nothing, everything is only on the Vadanas. But the Mahayana adjusted them according to the needs of the people. The Mahayana Buddhism, it was more practical. Now I am in this world, I have to live, I have to get on. I cannot simply sit that everything is Maya. It is not possible for everyone. For the ordinary man, he must necessarily live. We all know in religion that there is no God. God is only name and form. We call him Shiva, Rama, Krishna, all these are names and forms. But still, we go to the temple, we do worship, we do havan, everything. This is practically necessary to withdraw our mind from all these external attractions, etc. And therefore, these Mahayana Buddhists, they were more practical. We must give something for the man to snatch him away from the worldly desires and suffering and pin his attention. And therefore, Mahayana Buddhism made Buddha himself as the supreme being or God, and they preached the worship of Buddha. We find, as earlier I said, Kesava Dhruta Buddha Sharira, Jayadeva had propounded. Here the Mahayana Buddhists consider him as an avatara, Buddha, as God, manifestation of God, they considered. And in later days, the Jataka tales came into existence. Buddha taking the form of a deer, Buddha taking to the form of a lion. All these stories in order to teach the ethical and moral principles of Buddhism and the philosophy of Buddhism. They created, just like in Panchatantra, we have got the Dharmasastra stories presented through animals, the deer, the tiger, etc. Here in Buddhist Jataka tales also, the moral and ethical values of Buddhism are presented through beautiful poems and tales. The whole life of Buddha is presented very beautifully in English by Edwin Arnold, Sir Edwin Arnold, in The Light of Asia. He sings, "Ah, blessed Lord, O high deliverer, forgive this feeble script which doth thee wrong." He says, I am not able to present you properly. This is a feeble attempt to present you. So he says, forgive this feeble script which doth thee wrong, measuring with little wit thy lofty love, ah lover. You see, the ultimate reality cannot be comprehended by our mind, but still we try to describe him. In Gita Govinda we have explained Krishna, in Ramayana we have explained Rama. We try to explain the greatness and virtues of the Lord, but they cannot be limited by words. And here Edwin Arnold says that, meaning with little wit, I try to present all the love that you have presented. Brother, guide, lamp of the law, take my refuge in thy name, and I take refuge in thee. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Sangham Saranam Gacchami, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. This is the saying of the Buddhists. Surrender totally to Buddha. Join that congregation, Sangham Saranam Gacchami, and follow the path of Buddha, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. So he says, I take my refuge in thy law of good. I take my refuge in thy order, Om. The dew is on the lotus. Rise, great sun, and lift my leaf and mix me with thy wave. I am like a dewdrop on the lotus leaf. The sun rises and it takes me. So, Om Manipadme Hum, let me surrender totally unto you. The sublime, the sunrise comes, the dewdrop slips into the shining sun. What happens to the dewdrop? It merges in the sun when the sun rises. So, our life must ultimately merge in nirvana, complete peace, happiness and bliss. So, this is the path of Buddhism. Buddhism is not different from, though it is called Nastika philosophy, that is, do not accept the ultimate authority of the Vedas. All that Buddha has presented is what the Vedic great rishis had propounded. Of course, in the later days there were distortions, but we do not accept those distortions. Even today we accept the ancient saying of the great rishis, Satyam Vada, Dharmam Chara, Ahimsa Paramo Dharma. All these thoughts, beautifully presented in our Vedas and Upanishads. Buddha, in the modern period, he presented before the people because there was distortion of the Vedic injunctions, and therefore he came and presented these noble thoughts. In the next class, we will go into Jainism, another school of thought which followed Buddha, Mahavira, Jina. We will see in the next class. Jai Sri Ram, Vande Mataram.